morning, sir. Can you hear me?
I can. How are you? Good morning.
I am doing well. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here. Oh, and I can see you now too. Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you? Listen, which one are you? Sorry, I listened to you guys, but I didn't see you. So you know what I
I'm
mean?
I'm John.
You're John. Okay,
I'm John.
thanks.
Yes. Yeah. Ken, my redneck sidekick buddy is the absolute least tech savvy person on the face of the earth. So he will not be joining us today.
Okay. No problem. No problem.
Yeah, he lives it's about an hour and a half west of Austin. So doing things like this, I would literally have to be there in person to set it up to get it to work.
I
So
understand.
yeah, so that's how we play that.
Well,
But
you look like we're similar in age. He looks a little older, so I can imagine it's trickier for him just because he's not had a lot of time with it.
yes, exactly. Yeah, he does good. He just figured out in the last month that he could do speech to text, which he now loves because, he said he fat fingers everything. It doesn't come out right when he tries to use his thumbs.
Yeah,
So yeah, he's getting there slowly but surely. So, but he's
I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed to admit to you, I don't know how to do speech to text. I know that it can do it. I guess I've just never tried it.
yeah, I mean it's not too terribly difficult. The challenge with it comes in with you never necessarily know what it's going to translate. And
Right.
some of the words come out right, some of them are the right sound but the wrong word, phrasing wise when you go through and look at it. So it definitely can make it tricky.
Mm.
Let me see if I
Well,
can get this
I want to
extra
see if
screen going.
you can tell me if I put this headset on, if the audio is better or worse, because it's a podcast, right? So it's audio matters more than anything else.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what the answer will be. I haven't used this before.
It's different with every setup. Mine, I use one of the newer Surface Pros, and the mic on the machine does pretty well. But I've also got a studio mic that'll drop down from the ceiling, and I've got a little lapel mic on here, so I have got like triple backup just in case for myself.
Well, mine doesn't matter because this plug doesn't fit into this computer. So I thought it did. It looked like it
Ah,
would.
gotcha. Okay, well that's fine. I mean, is with the distance that you are from it, I can hear you fine. So
Okay.
hopefully it should sound when it gets to the recording side of it, it should sound just like it does right now to us. So I think we'll be good.
Okay. Great.
Very good. Okay, so this should be fairly painless. The questions are kind of random, but they should just be aspects of your life. It shouldn't be anything that throws you for too much of a loop.
Okay.
So I
And
am
you
gonna
edit it
go
later?
say what?
You edit it down, or is it just straight through?
It main like this first part of it will get cut out of it, but otherwise it is pretty much just straight through. We just go
Okay.
through and do it like a casual conversation basically and kind of
Okay.
see where it leads us. So
All right.
no real agendas. I do have one agenda, but that has to do with rooftop beekeeping, and that's only because recently I was asked to do so, and man, it's a different world.
It is different.
So we'll go into that for a brief moment, but otherwise, yeah, we'll just kind of go through here. Are you all good?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I'll have like a little kind of canned intro that I'll do at the beginning, and then I'll merge in the actual conversation with us. So, okay. Well, good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining us here on the show, Andrew. I greatly appreciate it.
Good morning, John. So great to be here with you.
How are things up there in New York? Is the weather finally starting to act like spring instead of winter?
It kind of went from winter to summer, all
Oh,
in.
you skipped spring entirely.
We didn't need it this year, I guess.
Oh man, does that cause kind of a bit of whiplash for the bees?
Well, the bees really started popping over the last week, I'd say, because there were hives that I thought just were not going to take off this year. Suddenly, I needed to add extra supers to them, so that was good. I know that one reason that we had a slow start was because we had such a cold and wet April, but we've caught up now with the weather. It's been in the 80s up here.
Oh, nice, very nice. I had a opportunity to kind of have a little bit of an inside avenue to some of the things in New York here for the past couple of months. I have a friend that was actually up there helping out with some of the COVID relief efforts on the front line and everything. And so I got little snippets of inside information from what was going on kind of up there at ground zero. But apparently, though, the whole city of New York is just like solid in bloom. You guys have flowers everywhere and a lot of these manicured little spaces that are just gorgeous.
We do have an awful lot of bloom at the moment. I think something like 24% of all of New York City is in the shade of a tree at some point. And so we have an awful lot of food for those bees to take in. So yeah, it's a good place to be a bee, I'd say.
Very good, very good. So for you, let's kind of go back here with your history a little bit. So you're actually a fourth generation beekeeper.
I,
So
yeah, that's right.
for you growing up, what is your first memory of beekeeping?
You know, it's kind of like if you speak a certain language in the house, or if you live in a certain place, you don't really necessarily think of it as an event. I don't remember beekeeping being such a thing in my house because it just existed and my father did it and my grandmother had done it, and so it wasn't some sort of moment where it came to us. It was just always there. However, I do remember around 10 years old or so wanting to spend more time with my father, and beekeeping was the perfect conduit to it, because even though it was hard work and there were stings occasionally, I got his uninterrupted time. And that was, to me, very important.
Yeah, no, actually, that makes perfect sense as well. You know, if you wanted to spend time with dad, you had to be out there in the bees, and that just kind of helps incorporate it. Well, that's really cool, and it makes perfect sense too, because if the family is heavily involved in it, and you're raised in that environment, then to you it's second nature. It's not anything unique, or there's no event. Hey, you know, this 1 month we're going to go out and do this thing. It's part of your life, so that would totally make sense that it's just totally integrated.
But also, I just want to point out, we've never been commercial beekeepers. We're sideliners at best, and at that time, really more hobbyists. But it has been a part of the fabric of our family for a long time. But we've never been a big operation.
Well, until now, for you.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we're making a lot of noise about it somehow. I'm not sure how big we are. We're certainly not very important.
Well, I don't know about that. I think anybody, even if it's just an individual beekeeper in their backyard with one hive, they're pretty important. They're making a difference and helping out with everything in the ecosystem and kind of life in general. It's one of the fun things that Ken has actually noticed, or to watch Ken go through, is once he got started in it, it started opening his eyes to all these other things that he would have never paid attention to before. And he'll get so excited. It's very entertaining to see this big old man turn into this jolly little kid, you know, and he'll be like, oh, I just saw, or I just noticed, or you know what dawned on me, and it all stems from the fact that now he's keeping bees and paying attention to the bees. So
I think that's true. I think even now, even though I've done it for decades, when a swarm comes along, for example, I get just as excited or just as frustrated if it's my own swarm, or just as whatever it is. There's a lot of emotion attached to it. So
yeah.
yeah, I think there is an excitement there, a childlike component, and it's nice to be able to be so enraptured by them year after year, decade after decade.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And there's, no matter what, there's always something new that they teach you. And I've said it on the show many times that it doesn't matter if you're just starting or if you've been doing it for 30 years, there's always something that will stump you, or that you'll be like, wow, I didn't realize they did that, or why are they doing that? Or, you know, what does this mean? And so it's so fascinating. I go through, and I mean, my business itself has so many different facets and aspects to it. And I was doing a consultation for a lady here just recently, and actually had the opportunity to catch a queen actively stinging and killing the other queen cells as she had emerged first and was going through. And I just happened to, was using a top bar. And so I just happened to flip that one comb over and was looking at the cells, and she was balled up on top of one of them, and she had her abdomen extended down inside of it, and she was going to work. And I have these moments sometimes where I'm like so caught up and fascinated. And then this other little voice is like, you should be recording this. And I'm like, oh, so I get my phone out, but so I actually got to catch that on film. And I was very proud of myself because it's something that we teach and we know happens, but you don't hardly ever see it in the actual act of being done, her going and assassinating all of her rivals. So that was pretty awesome for me.
I tell you, you should be proud of yourself. I've never seen it. I've never seen it happen.
Yeah, it was a fluke. I mean, it literally was a fluke. It was a one in a lifetime possibility, and it just happened to see her, and I was like, "What is she? Oh my God, she's actually killing the queens!" Like that was really cool. So you have bees or beehives. Well, you got both bees, obviously, but you have them spread across New York City, and you've got them in various different landscapes and settings, and a lot of that is actually like rooftop beekeeping, which for me is a completely new thing. I just was recently asked to keep bees on top of a hotel here in Austin, Texas. And unfortunately, like I gave them all of the best case scenario on where they should be, the location, the setup and everything. But the way this building is designed, the one place they can go where they want them, because they want them where also you can see them from inside the lobby, kind of at an upward angle. And it is the opposite of everything that I told them we need. It's facing the wrong direction. The wind blocks on the wrong side. There's no westerly shade. It's just, it's a nightmare for me. And it's actually added a whole new appreciation for kind of a different approach to beekeeping that I normally wouldn't do. But it's something that for you guys, a lot of places up there, that's your only choice, depending on where you're at and where you live, is to have it on a roof.
Yes, I do take care of apiaries on many rooftops in New York City. Also, I have them in community gardens, on private balconies. I have them in cemeteries, a lot of places. So one does have to get creative. As far as the rooftop goes, you're right. Finding the proper place to put them that balances the needs of the bees, the needs of the beekeeper, and that means access and ability to carry heavy equipment up and down. And then, of course, the wants of the client. That's tricky sometimes. And the bees could be exposed to much more sunlight that might be good for them, perhaps more wind than one would perhaps wish for them to have. And little things come up that you wouldn't think of. For example, the rooftop in New York City, at least, and I'm sure where you are in Texas, often is painted with a reflective paint that's very, very, very hot. So
Yep.
If you're working the hive, if the bees land on the ground in a normal setting, they're on the grass, it's no big deal, but they land on that roof and they instantly burn their feet or their wings to the extent that they're going to perish.
Yep.
So I have to bring with me some kind of sheet or moving mat or something with a hole cut out in the middle for the hive, put it over it so that when, because they will fall out when doing an inspection, at least they'll make it back into the hive safely. Also, I found out that I need to carry some kind of I don't always do these things, I should, but I ought to always carry some kind of a container that will hold the smoke of the smoker in, because if I go back into the building with a smoker that had been lit, even if I'm not detecting it, that smoker could set off the fire alarms.
Yep.
And that's a big deal. So those are just 2 of 100 little pieces of urban beekeeping that vary a little bit from beekeeping in a field somewhere. But urban beekeeping and rooftop beekeeping has been around for a long, long time. And when I was researching this book, I found a lot more information than I knew existed about people who had kept apiaries on Broadway in Manhattan in the 1860s, huge apiaries on Brooklyn rooftops in the 1840s, beehives on top of orphanages and hospitals in the 1900s, early 1900s. So even though we, this current crop of beekeepers in New York City, sometimes like to delude ourselves with the idea that we're doing something new and inventive, it's nothing of the sort.
Yeah, I can understand that. And that's actually, I did not have any clue about that either, that they had, been doing something like that for that long. And that's one of those things where their style of beekeeping even would be radically different than ours. They didn't have to worry about varroa mites and some of this other stuff and the diseases that we do today. So it was literally a completely different world at that point, but they were still going through all the same processes that we would. And they had less technology too. So you may have a building where you have the convenience of having an elevator to get you up most of it. They probably didn't have that at all, you know, and it's you've got to get all that equipment up there. You've got to get the initial hive and bees up there, which that in itself is a chore. Doing a honey harvest, trying to get it all back down, that's an even bigger chore because then it weighs way more than it did when you took it up there. So there's all these little challenges that if you're just on the ground and you're like, oh, I'm going to walk up to my hive with my smoker and my suit and my tool, and it's no big deal, you know, it's different than, oh, I've got to go up 5 stories or 10 stories and carry all that stuff with me. Try to find these ways to do the job and do it right, hopefully, fingers crossed, and then make it back down. And I actually experienced what you were talking about with the bees dying for the very first time in April. And it, for us, like Central Texas gets stupid hot. And that's usually July and August, right? So to be up
Mm.
there in April, it was about 85 outside that day. And we were up there. I opened up the inner cover, and exactly what you said happened. Some of the bees fell off the inner cover onto the ground. I thought nothing of it because normally they just crawl up the side of the hive or they'll fly and they'll come right back up. And I set the inner cover down, set the lid down, usually use my lid as a stand to set the other box on to kind of keep it up. And I turned around and I looked, and every bee that hit the ground was on their backs dead. And I
Mm.
just stood there in dumb shock awe, like, what just happened here? And it occurred to me that that was exactly it. The roof was so hot that when the bees hit, it was like instant game over. And that concerns me because, you know, that's 85 degrees. We haven't hit August when it's going to be 110, you know, and stay that way. So there's all these different concerns that, like, I don't think for in my scenario, I don't think that where they've got them is going to actually work. And, you know, I keep stressing this to them. We may need to put them somewhere else. There is one other little area that is probably, it's not ideal, but it's better than where they want them. But you can't see them. Even if you're up on the roof, you can't see them. It goes over and goes down into like this little secluded area,
Mm.
but it would protect them from that westerly sun in the late afternoon, and it gives them the wind blocks that they need. It would give them more shade, both like multiple times during the day. And I think that would probably be better to move them there. But they're at the moment they're like, well, let's just see. And so I'm stuck in that. Well, okay, but ultimately your wants are going to kill my beehive, and I'm not too thrilled about that. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge, and it's for me. Like I said, it's kind of just dipping my foot in the water as a first venture into how this works. So it's tricky for sure.
And I don't know how the parking and traffic situation is where you are, but my troubles with urban beekeeping, rooftop beekeeping begin prior to even arriving to my destination, because I'll have to get there. And even though during COVID-19, I haven't had much of a traffic or a parking issue, those issues will return. So I could spend an hour easily looking for a parking space.
Oh
And,
man.
and then that just eats up a lot of the day. And then let's say I find one. Then I'll have to walk to where the beehive is and get in the building and get engineering to open a door. And in the meantime, trying to get up past the doorman, the super, and everyone else who seems to think that I'm always carrying bottles of honey for them. You know, you have any honey? Got any honey for me? Can you bring me some honey? Like every time, every time. And let's say I finally get up on that roof. Maybe now I've invested an hour and a half to get to one apiary before I've even gotten any work done. Get on the roof, and then of course, my hive tool's in my truck, or
Oh,
my
no.
bird lab has run out, or something like that. So then you go back down, you get what you need if you can't get away without using it. And you get back up, oh wait, my meter's going to expire in 20 minutes because you can only do it in 1 hour increments in some parts of the city. So, I mean, I'm not trying to complain. I'm only trying to give an accurate portrayal of the frustrations inherent to rooftop beekeeping, at least in New York City. So
And
yeah, it's tricky.
that's very true, because actually helps put that into perspective too. If it's different if you live in that building and you're keeping hives on the roof versus you're traveling across the city to multiple locations where that is likely not your only stop that day. You might have to repeat this process 4 or 5 more times, you know. And that is a huge challenge. Like here in Austin, we have nightmare traffic, but it is not anything compared to New York City. Like I will never even begin to imagine what something like that is. But the city itself is not very big in the grand scheme of things, distance wise, it's not very big. And what should be, if you're going north and south, which is what crosses the Colorado River, which kind of divides the center of town, when you're going north or south, a 5 mile drive can take you 45 minutes. It's just ridiculous. Now, once we get to a lot of places like I'm lucky enough that the hotel, I can actually park on the top of the parking garage and then finagle my way around up to the roof without actually having to go into the hotel proper. And that is great for me. So I don't have that problem. But getting there, it can be a 30, 45-minute drive just trying to go 5 miles to get to the hotel because traffic's just not moving. But at the same time, if we try to go east or west, we have zero problems at all. You can go 14 miles in barely 15 minutes, whereas you can't go 5 miles in 45 if you're going the wrong direction. So it's that is something that actually can be a trick. And then we have the luxury of having hives spread throughout like the outskirts of the metroplex, but that also then, it incurs drive time. And so we may check 5 locations a day, but that may be, an hour in the truck or more each time going between locations to check it out. So
Absolutely.
I also have my issue usually arises with I forgot something is about 2 miles from the house. So I get in the truck, I'm loaded up, I leave, and then I'm just driving down the road, and all of a sudden I'm like, like I left the smoker fuel, or I look in the rearview mirror and the smoker's not hooked in the back of the truck for some reason. And then I got to turn around and go back and pick up that one thing. And so, yeah, but to do that on a roof, that is a whole nother type of nightmare, I would think, because you get there, you're downstairs, and if you spend the first 40 minutes back and forth and up and down, you're exhausted by the time you even get to start, and you haven't actually opened the hive yet, and you've already put in a whole day's work just getting there.
You get strong legs.
Yes. So you mentioned, now that with COVID and everything going on up there, New York was literally a ghost town for about a month and a half. Now things are kind of starting to loosen up a little bit, and there's a little bit of light hopefully at the end of that tunnel. But what was that like from a beekeeping perspective, like all across the country? And to put a lighter spin on this instead of the darkness that it actually is itself, but waterways started clearing up, air pollution started going away because there was not all of this traffic and commotion and chaos all the time going on. So do you think that it actually had a beneficial impact for the bees themselves?
I know that I saw memes floating around in articles here and there, but honestly, I think it was such a blip, like the absence of cars and so on. I think the bees didn't notice. I think that these little creatures have been around 100 million years, and I don't think that they've ever paid us much mind at all. And I don't think that they were impacted by this. I like the idea of human interaction avoidance making them more robust and healthier, but I haven't really seen it. But I also, like you, I understand the gravity of COVID-19, of course. However, always looking for the silver lining, it has been nice to be able to drive around from apiary to apiary and park easily. I wouldn't exchange it for what we've lost, but
This is true.
Trying to find something good in it,
Yeah.
that's been good. And the bees themselves, they seem to have taken it in stride. It hasn't really seemed to have impacted them very much.
Okay, that's fair enough. And it was just a speculation on all of that because you get to actually see the beauty of it. So, well, so you also have is it a nonprofit foundation, Bees Without Borders?
Yes, it's a 501c3. It's called Bees Without Borders. And we're not always especially active, especially because I now have a small child, and so he's gobbling up a lot of my time. But our mission is to help alleviate poverty through beekeeping endeavors. And to that end, we've worked in many, many places around the world, the Republic of Moldova, Fiji, Haiti, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, even places in the inner city, parts of the Bronx, parts of Brooklyn. And we are trying to bring beekeeping skills as a way for people to generate income. And that's it. It's very simple. We now have an apiary on the grounds of the United Nations in Manhattan. Well, it's in Manhattan, but it's technically international territory. So we have these international hives on the north lawn of the UN. And so we're working with them and have been for the last 4 years, I think. So yeah, we have a very unimpressive website. We are all volunteers. Nobody's paid anything, including the executive director, moi. And we just try very hard. And we are a very pale version of Bees for Development, which is a British organization that does what we do, but they do it much, much better.
Very cool. So you've gotten to travel to some of these places and then go through and kind of help teach. Well, like, do you know Les Crowder?
No.
Okay. So he's an individual. He's more focused strictly on a top bar style hive, but he's done similar things where he's gone over and he's actually taught how to either weave the actual hive or build it and kind of help them find ways that they can use the resources that they have to go through and do better beekeeping. But that sounds very familiar to that. And there's some things over there that, you know, we definitely take for granted because I've heard a story before of a lady that was a nurse, and she could actually make more money selling honey over there because it's both for a food but also for a medicinal property. And she could make more money doing that than she could what she got paid for actually being a nurse. And so it's a very viable and precious commodity in some of those countries, and it's a very unique skill to have for some of them. So it actually definitely helps, and it makes an impact if they can go through and learn that. They learn sustainability. They have something that actually helps them feel like they're making a contribution. It gives them something to do, but then they actually can support their family and bring in an income, and, you know, be it through the bees or through the honey and the wax and things like that. So that's amazing. Good job. Congrats.
Well, thanks. But they really do most of the work. I kind of go in there based on their needs. Usually they'll write some kind of a proposal, or they'll express their needs, and we'll craft a proposal and make sure that that's what they're looking for. And we'll try to find and train a local carpenter to build. Basically, we want this to exist and flourish without us. We don't have a savior complex at all. We just want to be helpful. And sometimes we make suggestions that they reject, and that's their prerogative. And sometimes they're probably right to reject them. They know more about their local conditions than we do. But for example, in Haiti, things were very tricky right after the earthquake, and we did sort of triage there because we happened to arrive a week after the earthquake for a planned trip. In Fiji, the biggest problem they were having, we found, was marketing the honey. They had this gorgeous honey, but then they were pouring it into old, used, emptied water bottles. And of course, that's fine, and that's a good repurposing of a plastic bottle. But with a little marketing finesse, a nice little jar and a label, they were able to sell that honey for 10 times the price to honeymooners who were visiting Fiji. Now, that is good for the people selling the honey, but not as good for the local community who might have wanted to buy the honey. They might get priced out a little bit. So there's no perfect solution, but keeping in mind what's best for the beekeeper. And one nice thing is that, as you know, many people can be beekeepers and still have their day job. So people could have 5 hives and it won't really take up too much of their time. We're not expecting any of these folks to end up with huge pollination contracts, at Mountains of the Moon in East Africa. We are hoping for them to supplement their income and maybe send 1 or 2 more of their children to school.
Very good. And that's a very admirable thing for anybody to go through and do. So again, even though you say, it's a little bit of, it's not us, it's them, but still you're helping facilitate that. So thank you again for that.
Well, thank you. We do try. I mean, we don't always get it done as well as I wish we could. And one of the nice things is that we've gone over with volunteers who bring new perspective and light, and I think it changes everyone for the better. We all have to pay our own airfare. That's how focused we are on using our limited funds for the project. So when I go, or when a friend goes, we pay our own expenses. We ask the host organization if they could help accommodate us, but it's not really that we can't find accommodation. We just want them to take some ownership of it. And generally we end up footing all the bills, but that's okay, because we are in a position to do that more than they are. So it's a great collaboration anyway. Most of the time it works out really well.
Very cool. Switching back over real quick to the COVID thing, I have seen on your Instagram feed, you have some very interesting masks.
Yes, I do. And in fact, my wife tells me that the more of my face the mask covers, the more attractive I become.
Oh, no.
Yes. And so, yes, I'm at the farmer's market, the Union Square Green Market, usually Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. Sometimes I miss the Mondays, especially these days. My little crew of beekeeping helpers and bottling helpers, they're all scattered to the four corners of the earth right now. So, but yeah, I've got to wear a mask at the market because it's required. I feel I should wear a mask at the market because I think it's sensible to do so. But there's no reason why one should not try to have a little bit of fun with the masks. So yes, I have had some unusual masks, and it has gotten a little bit of attention, and I hope and just made people smile a little bit. But no reason just to wear that surgical mask all day. Although yeah. I do have one of those under the fun masks. Safety first, but.
Yeah, no, that is that I got a kick out of that. I was going through and looking at some of your recent photos and saw the different styles and designs and stuff that you had going on, and they get pretty elaborate. That was pretty cool. I got a kick out of that. So it even for us clear across the country here, it still brings joy and laughter. So that's
well. Listen, now that we're getting those high 80s days, I don't know how many more of those masks I'm going to be putting on. It was okay in the 40s, but
yes. I can understand that. We still do our best to do the same thing here. And for instance, just yesterday, I was out doing an actual bee removal on a job site to do that. And it's already hot enough whenever you're wearing, like when we're doing that, we're in a full body bee suit and you've already got all this other stuff going on. But then to add a mask to it, it's just like basically sliding off your face because it's just soaking wet and it's miserable. But you're trying to be a trooper, still try to smile underneath it and acknowledge what the client needs and go through and get it done. But man, it is a pain in the rear.
It sure can be.
Yeah, absolutely. So you actually are you're about to release your book. I think it actually comes out when this airs. It will come out the next day. I believe it comes out on Tuesday, right?
Yes, sir. Tuesday. Yes.
And the book is basically kind of a year in your life of just some of the random things that you encounter there in New York when you're going about your normal bee day, correct?
That's right. So I framed it in 12 chapters, and they're January, February, March, etc. And they go through a typical year of beekeeping, but in my style, I'm going to call it a style.
Sure.
My style of writing is such that it bounces from one subject to another, but they're all related somehow, of course, to bees and beekeeping. And for instance, each chapter should have something about the bees themselves. So in January, what's going on inside the hive and how the queen is in the center of that ball and they're shimmying to keep her warm and so on. And what's happening with the bees in New York City specifically, but then how in January, because it's so cold in the Northeast, we generally take a Bees Without Borders trip somewhere. And so I may talk about a trip. I think the first chapter talks about a trip to Uganda. And then I bring it back in February, and it goes on and on. I talk a lot about swarms in August, and then I'll talk about what happens within the community of the bees when there's a swarm, and then maybe some swarm stories. And it goes on like that. It's a memoir. It won't set the earth on fire, but I think people will enjoy it. I hope so. I've been very, very fortunate. We've gotten good reviews so far. And the one bad review I got delighted me. It made me want to read the book because the criticisms were so ridiculous
Yeah.
that piqued my interest. So I said, oh, okay, that's good. There truly is no bad press.
Yeah, there you go. All attention is good attention when it comes to that. And if somebody's hypercritical of something, then it does exactly what you just said. It makes other people be like, but why? Like, was it really that way? Or why would somebody say that? And then they want to go read it too. So it all brings in the attention that you need for sure.
And let me tell you, I'm a very thin-skinned guy. So this is on an obscure website that I don't think anyone will find. I mean, places like the Wall Street Journal's book review gave it a glowing review, so that might have a little more clout. But it's been an interesting ride, and I'm actually very happy it's going to come out. If for no other reason, I don't have to do any more edits or think about things like that anymore. Because when I first would write a chapter, I'd write it. I felt that I had done a pretty good job. I sent it to the editor. She'd send back a note telling me that she was very pleased with it. And I would just breathe a sigh of relief because I'd worked so very hard on it. She'd send another note saying, I'm going to send you a couple of ideas. And then I'd get it back and the entire chapter would be eviscerated. And
Right.
move this here, put this last, elaborate on this, remove that. But like that could have been the most important part, perhaps.
To you. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I know that the editors know their job better than I do. So I took every suggestion very seriously. I worked very hard on it. I usually had to work on this book between like 3 and 7 in the morning because that was the only time I could have quiet because of that toddler and just a lot of work to do. So it was a labor of love, and I'm glad that that this part is over and that I get to just sit and chat with another beekeeper about it.
Yes. Yeah. You get to do the fun part instead of all the arduous work that went into it prior to that.
And
The
no
book.
traffic, and no traffic to get to you. I just, I woke up, I have no pants on. I'm just talking to you,
That is actually, see, I was a little hesitant with all of the technology and that, because the studio, okay, so backtracking, we do the podcast in a radio studio. So like we're legit, we're in there, we've got all the technology we need. We've got somebody over there running the soundboard for us. We're a little spoiled sometimes, and that's just life. And then all of a sudden COVID comes along and nobody's allowed in the studio. And we're trying to coordinate how to do this show where you've got Ken out there at his lake house. You got me in town. You got our producer at the radio station because they're the only person allowed in the building kind of thing. And it made it really interesting. And it's very bizarre because for it being a radio station, for whatever reason, when you do a phone call into the studio, it's not great. Like the sound quality is not great. It truly sounds like you're on a cell phone with bad reception, and it doesn't matter if you really are or not. And so that is a little bit annoying and frustrating for me. But the concept of doing like this, to go through and do a video interview or an interview online, we had never done it because we had never had to. And so as we're moving forward, because at first it was like, oh, it's just going to be a couple of weeks. And then it was like, oh, it's just a month. And here we are like 2.5 months later. And we're like, I don't know if we're ever going to see the studio again. So we've got to figure out how to continue doing the show and make it work and do the stuff that we used to do. Because frankly, I'm running out of other BS to talk about without being able to intersperse some of this stuff in there. So it is kind of fun. But after you do it a few times, there is a little bit of like, well, this is kind of cool. I can hold our meetings and our conference calls right here from my little home studio, and it doesn't matter, like you've got the comforts of home, and as long as you can keep, in your case especially, the little one from running over and jumping up on your head, and me keeping the dogs and everybody out of the room and everybody quiet, that's about the biggest challenge. So it is kind of a nice little reprieve from some of that. I don't have to get in the truck and drive down to the station and have a meeting with people. I can just click a button on the computer.
Very nice. I, in fact, drove to another location just so that that little one would not come in, because there's no way he wouldn't have not only have inserted his face into the video, but he would have touched every button on this computer by now. And he knows Daddy's not going to hit him, so he's not really afraid of anything else.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, oh, this is cool, shiny. What does this do? Look, you know what? This looks a lot like my game. Let me take this. Yeah, yeah. That's it's a challenging aspect for everybody in this new times when it comes to working from home. They normally don't have to worry about what the little one is doing while they're at work, and now the little one's like, but you're here. It must be to play with me.
We had studio time reserved to do the audio book in March,
Mhm.
and right up until one day before we were gonna do it, and then they had to cancel it. The building was closed. So okay, so 10 days ago, they came to my apartment and set up a little home studio for me to record the audiobook. Now, through no fault of their own, because they really did a great job, but that was a Manhattan apartment. And I think probably the audiobook will sound pretty good. However, I know that there are going to be times that the listener will hear the tension in my voice, because I will have read every sentence 3 or 4 times, probably, because a man dragging his recycling down the stairs, boom, 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 or the bus stopping in front and leaning on the horn, or something like that. Like that came through. We put moving blankets over the windows. We set up a little box almost that I was kind of hunkered down in. And at one point I said, I'd really like to stand up and do this. I'm reading and reading and reading. And they said, well, you can't really do it because like all of look, I don't know the technology, but the sound will be different was the answer.
Yeah.
So it was weird. But the audiobook is done and I read it. And so if my voice isn't too grating for anyone listening, and you don't feel like sitting and reading a book or can't, then the audiobook I think is also less expensive, but it might be a good option.
Yeah, and then for everybody out there listening, we've been talking about this. The name of the book is actually Honey and Venom by Andrew Coté, and you guys should be able to, by the time you listen to this, you should be able to find it out there. It is through Penguin Random House, and there is you can get I think actually a digital version, the audio version, or you can actually order a copy of the book as well. So plenty of opportunities out there. And I actually think that that's really cool that you did the audio version of the book as opposed to having somebody else do it. I think that's admirable. And it added another, I'm sure for you, it's another one of those, whew, that's done. Thank God, but
Amen.
I think it definitely adds a unique perspective, because you go through and you listen to some of these audiobooks that are narrated by just some other individual, and they may have, a good studio voice to do that, but it's just like anything. Whenever you go through and you read something, you put your own inflections in there. And so the person reading the book to you could be putting emphasis in areas where the writer may not have intended that to be the main focal point, or there's not as much passion to it, because for you, it is your book, it is your story. You know what was going on when that actually took place. And so as you're recounting it and retelling it, there's an emotional aspect to that. And there's going to be, when it's really funny and joyful, you're going to be remembering that, and you'll hear that in the tone. And so I think that's actually an awesome way to do that for something like this. So I'm looking forward to that. That'd be very cool.
Well, we first we had James Earl Jones, and then we had Morgan Freeman, and then who was the other guy? But they were fighting, they were bickering over, and I said, listen, guys, I'm just going to do it myself. I'm just going to do. Christopher Walken too. He came in, and I said, guy, I don't want you all fighting over who gets to do it. Let me just do it.
I'll take the hit on this one, guys. It's okay.
Yeah.
Morgan Freeman, that right there, that's like the end all be all. And now that he is like well entrenched in beekeeping, that's kind of the goal ultimately. Yes. I have said that numerous times. I'm like, one of these days we're gonna get him.
Well, I mean, I haven't seen anything other than that one meme about it and that one interview. So I'm dying to know more about this apiary and this refuge. But yes, from what I understand, he's got something like a 100-acre bee resort, and
Yeah,
he's taking care of bees, I think, in Mississippi. And
it is.
I want to know more about it. So please do. I mean, you've got me. I guess the next logical step would be to get Morgan Freeman.
It's got to be. There's not really anywhere else to go other than that. We
No,
have
there's
to keep
nowhere
going
left
up.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
keep going up. I am actually working on that. I have a associate acquaintance of mine who I used to work with back in another life, and he grew up in Mississippi. His mother still lives there in the area where this little bee preserve is, and Morgan Freeman and I don't remember if it is his lawyer or another individual. They own a little like restaurant and diner there, and he sells his honey in there as well. And so the guy that I know, his mother knows all these people. And I keep, every time I see him, that's the first thing I did is, have you talked to your mom yet? Have you sent her down there? You need to go down there. She needs to go down there so she can put in a word, and I've got friends every now and then that will just randomly tag Morgan Freeman in posts that we do. Like, but one of these days.
I had no idea I could go to a diner in Mississippi and get Morgan Freeman's honey. I mean, I'm
Yep.
already planning a road trip.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to check it out. I just think, it would be awesome. And I mean, come on. It's the voice of God.
Well, that's true. In the book, I talk about how, I lost it. Henry Fonda was a beekeeper. The actor Henry Fonda was a beekeeper. I know his son did Yuli's Gold, and most beekeepers know that film that Peter Fonda acted in. But his father, Henry, was a beekeeper, and he called his honey, I think, Bel Air honey, and he would sell it or probably give it to his friends. There have been a lot of highbrow, well-known beekeepers out there in the world.
They're actually having, and sometimes anybody, famous or not, it's kind of interesting sometimes. They all just kind of seem to start coming out of the woodwork, and you wouldn't know necessarily. It's almost like this secret identity. It's like, oh my God, you keep bees too? Like I would have never guessed, or I would have never known. It's kind of entertaining. But then for everybody else who's not a beekeeper, hands down, every single time, the number one question: do you get stung?
Yeah, and the answer is yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah,
and
all the time.
How many times have you been stung? And you just can't answer it because
Nope.
It's been many.
Yeah.
Why
My other
count?
My other question that usually follows it is, does it hurt? And it takes a lot of restraint for me to answer that politely. I'd be like, yes, I get stung, and yes, it hurts. And every time I want to say 4-letter words, but I mean, it goes away in a few seconds, but I still have that reaction every time.
Yeah, I don't know. I've noticed as I've gotten older, I can be stung and I don't mind it as much. But then there's that one that just gets me. It could be on a fingertip or just behind the knee. Overall, the worst place to be stung, in my opinion, is inside the nostril. That's been the most painful place. I know that I was once stung under the tongue. One got in my mouth because I was eating a piece of comb. And I was so careful. I picked it up out of the hive. I looked it over. But in that 2-inch journey from hand to mouth, a bee jumped in on it. And that one was bad. But the nostril, I think, is the worst.
Yeah. Pain wise, I've had like the corner of the eyebrow, the temple, and the corner of the mouth. Those have been like the 3 closest to the key targets. But the odd thing was the one on the mouth and the one in the eyebrow didn't really cause any swelling or do anything. The one in the temple, it was in just this perfect little soft tissue area. Half of my whole head swole up. Like my eyes swole shut. I had this drastic reaction that normally I don't have. And I think it found like just the perfect spot to nail it and got me. The chin, actually, right there in the cleft of the chin, that one hurt because that was like a nail gun. It's skin and bone. There's nothing else there.
You're hiding your cleft with your little goatee. You'll have to.
Yeah. It's in there somewhere. That was one of those first, rookie mistakes when I first got my suit, and you lean forward and put your chin out and the veil touches your chin and nailed me right through the front of it. Ken is still trying to learn that lesson. He's up to 4 or 5 and he still hasn't got it.
I mentioned it in the book, but my father, every time I or my brother would get stung, he just laughs at us. And so it got to where we gave no reaction at all to being stung because we didn't want to give him the satisfaction of being able to laugh at us. So I can take a lot of stings without the people around me knowing. But like you, if I'm alone, a lot of colorful language often comes
Yep.
out.
Yep. I do that. I try to gauge my surroundings and my audience and try to do as good as I can.
Yeah.
The ones you'll see me wince sometimes. I'll have something in my hand, and if they get me in the hand,
Yeah.
I can't drop what I'm holding, but I might tense up or kind of wince at it. But usually I'm fine. But when it's for us, it's when we're doing the removals. That's when we get stung, and it's expected and understandable because we're literally destroying their house at that point. We're
Sure.
opening up a cavity that they're in and we're taking them out. And our bees down here, I affectionately call them Texas redheaded mutts. They have some spicy genetics in them, and they have a little bit of an attitude. And so we run the gamut of the ones we did yesterday were just the nicest bees ever. They were super sweet. Didn't really mind that we were going through and doing things. They never even like turned to focus on us. They were just focused on their own stuff. But we'll run into other ones where every single bee in the colony is basically a guard bee. And it's just wave after wave after wave. And they're coming straight for your hands. And it doesn't matter what you're wearing. They can sting through the leather gloves. They can sting through the nitrile gloves, yeah, so it makes it interesting. But my hands are probably the predominant spot that I usually get stung is there. Every once in a while, one of them will join me in the truck, and I don't realize it. And they will remind me either halfway home or right as I get out of the truck. And that actually probably was one of the worst, was up in the armpit. I had one crawling up my side and didn't realize it. And I picked up a grocery bag and put my arms down, compressed it, and it nailed me. And I dropped the bag, hat dropped through I wasn't sure what had just attacked me. It was so far removed from when I was actually with the bees that I didn't associate it at first. But yeah, that one was probably, now to think about it, that was probably the most painful and most surprising.
Well, there's some small satisfaction in knowing that bee is dead.
It'll never do that again.
Never.
Yeah, that is true. Wow. Well, sir, I have taken up quite a little chunk of your morning, and I know that you have plenty of things that you need to be doing in your busy life. So I will kindly let you go, but I do greatly thank you for joining us here again this morning. It was greatly appreciated. And just go ahead real quick for everybody, if they want to follow you on Instagram or want to check out the book, kind of go ahead and give them whatever you would like them to have, where they can find you.
Okay, prepare to be underwhelmed by the website andrewshoney.com, the uncreatively named website. And when you get there, yes, we are a real company. Yes, it is a multi-generational business. No, we have not focused all of our energy on that website, so apologies in advance. So it's andrewshoney.com. For more up-to-date stuff, since the website hasn't been updated. Look, we're real beekeepers if we're not updating our websites and so on.
That's right. We got other things to do.
Other things to do, my friends. But the Instagram is also Andrew's Honey. So what is it? At Andrew's Honey.
Yep.
And the book is published by Ballantine, a Penguin Random House imprint. Honey and Venom, Confessions of an Urban Beekeeper. And I had to change a few names in there because I don't want lawsuits and I don't want tears, but I think people will be entertained. It's not necessarily a book only for beekeepers. In fact, I assumed that I'd have more non-beekeepers reading it. So while it is a tutorial in the life of honeybees as well, it's not a how-to book on how to be a beekeeper or anything of the sort. It's more little stories and vignettes of beekeeping in this place or that, dealing with people, and well, what can I say? I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, go out there and check it out and see what you guys think, for sure. Well, thank you again for your time this morning, Andrew. It was great talking to you. Hope to chat with you again someday in the future, and hope that you and your family stay safe and well up there, and you guys have an amazing bee season.
Thank you. You also. What a pleasure to see you, because I usually just hear that melodious voice on the podcast, but now I see that handsome face connected to it, and I think how unfair that one man has all of this. But
oh, well, thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate that. Yeah,
it's really good talking to you, John. I really enjoyed it.
it was good talking to you too. Thank you very much. You have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye now.
All right, bye-bye. Sweet. Okay, cut. Yeah, you're good. And my foot is so asleep.
Look, I wasn't kidding. See, no pants. Yeah.
I have shorts on as well, but at the moment I can't stand up and show you because I was sitting on my leg and I can't feel anything from the knee down.